Welcome to the second installment where we take a look how turnkey genomics and moving genomic testing inside hospitals in a decentralized way unlocks this vast potential of bringing life-saving genomics that we all know to actual patients and expand the utilization to what it actually should be according to guidelines. In the first part, I will do a very quick recap. If you want to know more details, watch the first part. But very quickly, we saw in the first part that the two biggest genomics tests in the country or in the world, hereditary cancer for cancer risks in populations and complete genomic tumor profiling for cancer patients are actually heavily underutilized right now. Everyone knows that. 2% of the population that should get hereditary cancer testing got it so far. And complete genomic profiling, less than 20% of cancer patients actually get tested, and that has direct life-saving effects with targeted and precision treatments. So that's terrible. One of the reasons was this year, I'm not going to go into it too much, but the complexity of this genomics industry that is running into the hospitals and trying to explain this to the medical leadership and the C-suite, and they're getting very confused, and that's why nothing happens. It's too complex, and it's dead on arrival on a leadership hospital level. If Illumina or Element or, Agilent or whoever runs into the hospital and says, look, buy my stuff, they don't understand what you're talking about. So that is why for a long time now, for over 2 years, at Quantin, we have been working on better solutions that integrates all the existing technologies, but makes it easier to understand for hospitals and turns it into real turnkey solutions where we structure the entire problem not by throwing all these genomic technologies at a CEO or COO of a hospital or at the medical leadership, but we structure it into a turnkey solution where we say, look, we take your patients, we identify them and qualify them under Medicare or commercial insurance and your medical guidelines. We then stand up a lab for you that you don't have to worry about. It's a completely comprehensive tech stack with all the great stuff in there, from Element to Agilent to, Fabric, Invitae, whatever is required. And make sure we can do the testing. And then finally, we make sure you get the money from the insurance. We manage the appeals. And for you, it's a guaranteed profitable endeavor, a profit center. And for the medical leadership, it's guaranteed to improve outcomes because these are proven tests. So that is a turnkey solution, talks directly to C-level, makes everyone happy. These turnkey solutions unlock an enormous opportunity because they can now structure all our partners across the board, all genomics technologies, even AI technologies, by the way, who are coming in hard, AWS Genomics and NVIDIA, Microsoft. So the guys who are sitting on the data layer, they also need it, as well as pharma research, CROs. All of that now has a central platform that can be used, and that platform delivers value into hospitals. So the hospitals don't have to worry about this crazy complexity layer of genomics because it gets translated into opportunity, and opportunity gets translated into value. So that's very quickly what we discussed in the last video. We then jumped very quickly into a financial model, and I will just very quickly recap that, where we basically outlined the entire hereditary cancer opportunity. What is the current population? What is the qualifying population of 50 million Americans? How many of them should get tested? How many of them do get tested? 4.8 million should get tested per year. 240,000 do get tested. That is the delta we are after. That is getting unlocked through hospitals. Same with CGP. 1.9 million cancer patients, 950,000 should get tested every year, but only roughly 200,000 do get tested. That gap kills a lot of cancer patients, which is extremely bad. And it also doesn't allow revenue to be recognized on a much larger level. And then we had these financial models on the right side, where we looked at the per test costs broken down into all the components that go into a test: NGS consumable flow cells, assay revenue, Agilent, Illumina, bioinformatics, clouds, right? The processing of the raw data from the sequencing platforms, the curation revenue for hereditary cancer, who interprets this whole thing. Then the hospital genomics revenue, the revenue the hospitals would make in this whole situation, and the revenue the turnkey tech and services provider makes. And that is by hereditary cancer. We did the same for CGP. All these numbers in this video, we are now going to take and translate that into the actual industry revenues to understand what will Illumina, what will Element, what will Agilent, and so on actually make. What is the new total addressable market that we unlock with this big move of decentralized genomics? So this is going to be very interesting. Watch out for it. Let's jump right into it. Now, let's get to the interesting piece. What does it all do? What is the kind of, if you would pitch this to Illumina, for example, and say, look, there's a big opportunity here that, is coming up and you better make sure you can capture that. What is the thing they could capture per year in revenue as a TAM, total addressable market here, for the unlock through turnkey solutions in hospitals, for hereditary cancer, and for CGP? That's what we are asking. So for Illumina, the relevant pieces of the puzzle are they can make money on the NGS consumables, of course, NovaSeq, NextSeq. They can make money on bioinformatics for complete genomic profiling only for TrueSight oncology, even though I don't think it's competitive right now. But if they would tweak it a little bit and get into that market, and they can, of course, make money on the assay for TrueSight. Illumina's total market potential, growth potentially is $315 million a year. That is all assuming US only, of course. So that's not a shabby number. For Element Biosciences, because they only do consumables NGS, they are looking at 73 million or 74 million a year. The good news for them is that's easy to capture because they have a huge leg up. Here's a very competitive market with Agilent for Illumina. They have to make sure they can capture that, and that will be a pretty tough fight. For Element, this is not going to be a tough fight, in my opinion. So this is pretty safe revenue they're looking at. Agilent, well, Agilent actually has a very, very huge market here. Agilent might be one of the biggest winners in this because they have a significant assay revenue just on an assay, kit basis or custom kit basis for CGP and hereditary cancer panels, plus the library kits. And the bioinformatics for CGP is 128 million they could make. That's directly competitive with Illumina, TrueSight. But Agilent's panel right now has a big leg up. It needs to be tightened up a little bit as a kit on CGP, but that's looking pretty good. Then, super interesting. I'm not going to go into too many details here. I had some very good conversations on the hereditary cancer bioinformatics and curation side of things. If you know anything about hereditary cancer, you know that curation is a big, big deal and problem. There are great companies like Fabric Genomics. We are working with them closely. And Sophia Genetics, it's a competitor of Fabric, who only help labs to do curation and generate the final reports on hereditary cancer. And I have very basic assumptions here where we basically would pay $40 for bioinformatics and $40 for curation, two service providers who make sure this all works. And it is kind of known that Invitae and Myriad have solutions that could disconnect their enormous bioinformatics and curation capabilities from their assays and actually provide a curation layer to decentralized labs. Not a business they're doing right now, but a technological capability they already have. And maybe Embry and others too. But I would say Invitae and Myriad are clearly the leaders here. So this is an interesting market where they could capture $288 million a year in revenue that is very high margin, by the way. So interesting what happens here in this market. Will Invitae and Myriad make the move to actually compete with Fabric and Sophia, which would be bad news for them both? But they're also a little, ahead in commercialization, Fabric and Sophia. Then, of course, the big centerpiece of this entire strategy is the turnkey solution, tech and services revenue for Labcorp, Quest, or Quantgene, or people like that. Well, that is, of course, an enormous chunk of money, but it's also an enormous amount of work, technology development, and all kinds of things. So they would basically be the ones who make sure the hospitals get what they need, and all of these things are integrated. Very important, the hospitals, $1.3 billion, more or less in pure margin flowing into medical budgets of hospitals, or let's say budgets in general. Hospitals decide, is that bottom line enhancement or is it budget enhancement? We are always pushing for budget enhancement to get this to the medical teams so they can do more research, hire more medical professionals, make sure population genomics is managed accurately. But it's an enormous influx of capital into the hospital system here, given the fact that this is pure initial margin. Then the final big thing, and I'm going to make a different video on that because I find this very fascinating. What about oncology? What about pharma? the big elephant in the room. And we will dive a little deeper into some, oncology targeted treatments and their revenues and the impact. But as you all know, oncology, pharma, precision oncology is heavily dependent on genomic testing to actually find the biomarkers that qualify for certain drugs. I mean, Keytruda is the famous big example for TMB, tumor mutational burden. And just on a simple, observation of the growth here, of course, every precision oncology company has an enormous interest in increasing that number of how many patients are being tested. 190,000 cancer patients, or let's say 900,000. Growth potential of 450%. And that growth should translate pretty much one-on-one into use of precision drugs and targeted treatments. So I think the number behind that might, dwarf all these numbers. Keytruda alone is $30 billion a year. So not a big secret, oncology, precision treatments are an enormous market that is directly dependent on the deployment of widespread precision testing, genomic testing, complete genomic profiling. So this will be a separate video, but it tells you a little bit why this is such a big deal that we are now deploying turnkey genomics into hospitals and empowering hospitals to vastly enhance and expand genomic testing, and with a clear financial incentives for the hospitals. So I hope that was helpful. This is my quick take. Let me know what you think in the comments, and let's have a debate about that.